Good evening. This is Gay Spirit, a program of information and entertainment for the lesbian and gay community of the greater Hartford area.
I awoke and I'm not feeling better. I know what that means. Like all of my friends before me, I watched every stage, lived every scene, and I can't pretend anymore. Always had escaped somehow, but I know it's my turn now. I'm left with what might have been and what I'll never see. I have nothing to show for my life. Why did this happen to me? All my hope, it sweat out of my body along with my dreams. And what was the point of my life? Why was I here? What did it mean? And I can't pretend anymore. And I know my time is now. How could this have been allowed? I'm not feeling better. I'm not feeling better. I know. I'm not getting better. I'm not getting better. I know.
Act up, fight back. Act up, fight back. Act up, fight back. What do we do? Act up, fight back. Act up, fight back. What do we do? Act up, fight back. Act up, fight back. What do we do? Act up, fight back. Act up, fight back. What do we do? Act up, fight back. Act up, fight back. When do we want it? What do we want? Fight back. When do we want it? Fight back. Act up, we fight back. Silence equals angry, we want action. Act. Silence equals death. We are angry, we want action. Act. Silence equals death. Release the sun now. Act up. Release the sun now. Act up. Act up. Fight back. What do we do? Act up. Fight back. Act up. Fight back. What do we do? Act up. Fight back. We are angry, we want action. What do we do? Act up. Fight back. We are angry, we want action. Silence equals death.
To me, personally, Better is the single most poignant of songs about AIDS in a body of musical material drawing on that subject that was recorded over the past 3 decades. Many other songs about AIDS have gone over the air on this program over those decades. This song, by singer-songwriter Scott Free, is about a young gay man sick with AIDS who is not getting better. He realizes tragically that he is sick unto death, and the funeral bells chiming in the musical arrangement emphasize this. I personally witnessed in my lifetime the mortality that was AIDS among gay men of my generation. Scott Free is also of the baby boomer generation of gay men, the first generation of gay men in history to come out publicly in great numbers. Scott Free is a proud gay leather man and rock musician based in Chicago. Looking back on his gay life and those of others in our generation, he wrote a series of songs about his life and times. A pop opera, he calls it. It's also called the Pink Album, which he released in 2008 through his own Leather Western Records label. I've interviewed Scott Free about his music making for broadcast on this program. The song immediately following the tragic Better is about the response to all the AIDS mortality on the positive side. The response of AIDS activism, echoing perhaps the activism of the Stonewall gay liberation movement of the 1970s. Act Up, Fight Back incorporates actual chants I remember AIDS activists chanting in their public demos back in the 1980s and 90s. The Act Up organization and the AIDS dissident movement, too, have passed on into the history of acquired immune deficiency syndrome in the United States. You'll be hearing something about that sordid history momentarily tonight on Gay Spirit, America's longest continuously running radio program specifically devoted to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues, now working its way into its 35th year of uninterrupted week-by-week broadcast over listener-supported WWUH. With us is Gay Spirit's companion program for going into its 27th year now is This Way Out, America's internationally transmitted LGBT radio magazine. This Way Out goes out to upwards of 200 radio stations in this country and countries around the world, and is transmitted globally as well on the shortwave radio band and via internet audio servers. WWUH was on the original list of subscribers when This Way Out premiered way back on April 1st, 1988. Ever since that date, there has been a full hour of gay programming on Thursday evenings over 91.3 FM. First comes the current weekly half-hour-long installment of This Way Out from 8 p.m. to 8:30, followed immediately by another 30 minutes of locally produced and live on-air Gay Spirit, bringing you up to 9 o'clock. The two gay shows are but a tiny part of the full spectrum of audio alternatives this station offers the listening public nonstop, 24 hours on the clock. To access this wealth of music genre shows and public affairs programs at any hour of the day or night, at any location on the planet in real-time audio, go to our station's website at wwuh.org. People who have followed this program going back many years will remember the Epidemic Journal feature series, presenting alternative perspectives on acquired immune deficiency syndrome, the HIV retrovirus, the war on AIDS, and associated topics. Among various scientists, healthcare professionals, and independent journalists I have interviewed for the series, the one that I have remained in contact with is Mark Gabrish Conlan, editor and publisher of Zinger's News magazine from 1994 to 2012. Zinger's was a monthly publication based in San Diego, California, and serving the LGBT community there. The Epidemic Journal series ended early in the 21st century, but Mark Conlan and I continued to talk about AIDS and HIV once a year for broadcast on Gay Spirit around World AIDS Day, December 1st. I was preoccupied with the local news features when World AIDS Day 2014 came and went. At the new year, I got back in touch with Mark Conlan. Although I consider it pretty stale as a news topic, he was willing to go at it again. Mark was more deeply committed to the AIDS dissident cause than I had been. He founded the San Diego chapter of an AIDS dissident organization, HEAL, which is the acronym for Health Education AIDS Liaison. HEAL San Diego also is now defunct. In this, the third and concluding part of our recent pre-recorded telephone conversation, we consider the reports in the mainstream media about AIDS and HIV in 2014. I reached Mark at his home in San Diego. After talking about the more recent wrinkles in AIDS drug treatments, I think way back to a time before the syndrome and the retrovirus, to what had previously been considered a peculiarly gay disease.
I'm old enough to remember that before the AIDS epidemic came about in the early 1980s in the gay male subculture, that it was hepatitis B that had been considered the gay disease. And also, scientific community had sort of come up with another form of hepatitis C, and I'm reading in the year 2014 about new treatments for hepatitis C that are absolutely insanely expensive. I'm speaking of the Sovaldi drug treatment, which would cost at least $84,000 for the complete treatment for hepatitis C. First of all, do you think hepatitis C is a real disease?
Well, frankly, I know there's some skepticism about this among some AIDS dissidents, but I don't see any reason to believe that, the various forms of hepatitis aren't, in fact, what they are claimed to be, which is a genuinely infectious disease. The fact that the spread patterns for hepatitis B were very different from the spread patterns of HIV. They were more in line with what we expect from an infectious agent. Now, even so, that gets into the whole years-long controversy between, Pasteur and his famous antagonist Béchamp about, even if a germ can, quote, cause, unquote, a disease, what does a person have to do to make themselves either hospitable or inhospitable territory for that germ to cause that disease in them? And hepatitis seems to be one of those diseases with an infectious component, but also a toxic component. That, there are certain things that you do to make yourself more vulnerable to reduce your ability to fight off these infections, and that controlling them can be, as much or more a part of changing your lifestyle and and reducing these toxic factors than, actually dealing with the germ itself.
Have you come up with any particularly interesting things about HIV and AIDS that you've seen in the mainstream press? Anything else impress you?
Not really. There's an article that I just got online that was an interview with Françoise Barr-Sinoussi, who was Luc Montagnier's assistant in the original researches that so-called discovered HIV.
That goes back to right around 1980, doesn't it?
Right. Now, Montagnier actually disqualified himself from the AIDS establishment when he insisted that HIV couldn't cause AIDS by itself and needed a cofactor. And it's an interesting story. I haven't really had a chance to review the clipping in depth, but I think one of the things she said was they found antibodies to HIV in only one of the people they studied. And she and Montagnier were cautious enough that they merely identified the virus as lymphadenopathy-associated virus because they could identify it with swelling in the lymph nodes.
Yeah, LAV. That was one of the early terms applied to this health condition, like GRID, a gay-related immune disorder.
Well, yeah, as I said, it's been blamed on the gay community from day one, really, that it might have existed before that. There are, attempts. I think one of the clippings you sent me alleged that they could trace it back as early as the 20s, which doesn't make much sense to me. But they can find these particular bits of protein. They can find these particular genes. They have never actually, to this day, isolated live infectious HIV from a living patient. It's always bits and pieces. It's always surrogate markers. It's always this, that. It's a protein. It's a gene sequence. It's something that we have to use the polymerase chain reaction invented by AIDS dissident scientist Kary Mullis to find. And it's there's never an actual isolation of a live infectious HIV particle from a living patient.
And that's why we have, and we still have no gold standard for HIV testing.
We don't know what the antibodies are antibodies to. They're antibodies to one or more of 9 proteins, which are believed to make up HIV.
That's the key word, believed.
And, scientists have been able to concoct a recipe for a synthetic HIV, which is what they grow in the labs and use to test the drugs before they actually put them into animals and then into people. But it's just yet another one of the bizarre ways that the ordinary self-corrective mechanisms of science have been short-circuited on this issue, so that what we thought of as scientific accuracy and scientific truth do not apply here. It's kind of this Alice in Wonderland world where like Humpty Dumpty and Alice's Looking Glass, words mean exactly what they say they mean and not anything else. We haven't isolated it, so we'll just redefine isolation so we can say that we have.
Yeah.
We can't find actual live infectious virus, but we can find antibodies to the 9 proteins we think make up the virus, and we'll call that a diagnosis of a disease.
Yeah, and it is this that keeps moving along, keeps driving the AIDS research establishment now into the year 2015. Do you think it will collapse somehow or other soon?
Well, as I was fond of quoting during the Heal San Diego meetings, what T.S. Eliot said of the world, that it will end not with a bang but a whimper, will be true of AIDS as well. In fact, that's, in a lot of ways, that's really happening already. And there are still enough people who are buying into it, taking the test, getting themselves labeled HIV positive, freaking out, getting on the drugs, staying on the drugs, staying with these quasi-religious dosing schedules that are supposed to be absolutely essential, or the virus will figure out how to evolve resistance to the drugs. And, which is itself a reversal of the usual theory of evolution, which is that a virus evolves resistance to a drug if you keep feeding the person the drug, not if you stop.
And so that delusion also continues.
Yet another way in which the so-called HIV/AIDS science has turned the tables on real science and created this sort of Alice in Wonderland world where everything means what they say it means, and you're ridiculed if you try to stand up for real reality and real science and real logic and real reason.
Well, maybe at the end of 2015 we should look in again on this HIV fantasy land and discuss this subject again, stale as it might be. And I'm glad that I was able to talk to you about the status of HIV and AIDS as it was through 2014.
Well, it's like, Alan Iles, who wrote a book about the Marx Brothers, compared Senator Joe McCarthy to Groucho Marx and said, he really comes off as a great clown, and the only problem was that McCarthy hurt real people. Well, AIDS in some ways is just as ridiculous. It's like, a Marx Brothers spoof of the medical establishment, only, there are still, thank goodness, fewer of them, but still people who are buying into this nonsense, taking the test, which is the sort of gateway into, the Alice in Wonderland world of AIDS, and taking the results seriously and taking these expensive drugs. Enough of them are doing that to sustain the profits of the drug companies and make it still worth their while to manufacture these things.
Yeah.
So, there are people really being hurt by this. So it's kind of hard to laugh at it, but it's also kind of hard to take it seriously, because if you really looked at it objectively, the whole idea of HIV/AIDS is not only wrong, but silly.
Yeah, good for a laugh, perhaps, but maybe we will take a look at it sometime further down the line. And Mark Conlan, I've got to thank you once again for allowing me to bounce some of these ideas and some of these articles from the mainstream press off you. Good to talk to you again.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and it's always a pleasure.
Stop the madness.
I'm gonna say this rhyme just to let you all know that this disease is just too so damn thoughtless. You bought this if you already have it. Have it or not, please stop the madness. Use a condom if you're having sex. Or homeboy, don't have sex. Use a condom if you're having sex. Use a condom. For the next ordeal, please protect yourself. Think of helpless people smaller than yourself. You went and had a baby, look what you did now. Could your baby die, look what you did now. You think you're safe, but yo, you're not protected. Did you ruin the life? Is your mind ejected? It shows no mercy. Always wanted to kill. The moment of joy that you needed at will. Just think of all the things that you did to yourself. Protecting your body, protecting your health. You change it channel to channel, 'cause your mind cannot handle it. A person with AIDS holds the heart candle. Sitting back, always thinking your life's at stake. That hour of pleasure, your whole life aches. Transmitted through your blood, from your chest to your back, from the human or needle of your first contact. Pushing life to the max gives a reason to know. You put your life on the line, now you're on death row. Death row.
If you want to make things better, got to get your lives together. Stop the madness. Judges, lawyers, politicians, they can change this world condition. Stop the madness. Si tú quieres mejorar las cosas, tienes que dejar tu vida. Para la hoguera. Políticos, jueces, abogados, cambiar el mundo ya no pueden. Para la hoguera.
It's a deadly virus, put out in red, terrorizing worldwide. are weak, then you have no willpower. A series of results, disillusion of belief. And sex education is the answer, chief. It's a series of results, disillusion of belief. And sex education is the answer, chief.
At the beginning of the show, I spoke of the body of musical material dealing with the subject of AIDS. It's a considerable accumulation of music in varied musical styles, and rap is represented in this really obscure recording of Stop the Madness of AIDS, an audio creation of the Dorchester Youth Collective, with funding for the project partly coming from the Massachusetts Department of Health. Stop the Madness was issued in tape cassette format in 1988, in the period of maximum hysteria about AIDS. And remember that AIDS disproportionately affected the black community in that period. You heard the short version of the Stop the Madness rap. The cassette includes an extended remix, plus dub version on the B-side of the cassette. This cassette is one of the many audio documents of LGBT history preserved in the Gay Spirit Radio Archive. Metropolitan Community Church of Hartford wants you to come out and come home to a truly accepting and inclusive spiritual community. MCC Hartford, founded in 1973, is Greater Hartford's oldest LGBT community organization that is still very much in existence. MCC Hartford invites you to join them for worship service Sundays at 10 a.m. at the Parish House of Church of the Good Shepherd, 155 Willis Street in Hartford on the ground floor. One social outreach of MCC Hartford's ministry is the Somewhere Coffee House, which gathers the second Friday of the month from 7 to 10 p.m. in MCC space in the Parish House. For more information about Metropolitan Community Church of Hartford, phone the church's office number, area code 860-724-4605, or go to the website, www.mcchartford.com. MCC's pastor, Reverend Aaron Miller, is available to counsel anyone within the sexual minorities who needs help. To reach him, you can call the pastor's direct line, area code 860-990-1225. Well, that does it for Gay Spirit for this Thursday evening. Be back with us every Thursday night from 8:30 to 9 p.m. for more information and entertainment for Greater Hartford's lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. This is Keith Brown wishing you a real gay week and good night for Gay Spirit.